Hey everybody, welcome into this Photoshop tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. Today we're going to take a look at this color splash text effect in Photoshop using a stock photo of a milk splashing. And the reason I'm using milk splashing is because if we want this to be like bright orange, as we're going to try to do, or more like a peachy light orange, I guess is what we end up with. But if you want to do like a bright pink or something like that, milk tends to work really well because it's not see-through. Something like water or Gatorade or various juices are see-through. So you want to pick a liquid that's not really see-through. The difficulty with milk is because of the fact that it's solid white. It does get beautiful highlights, but when you begin colorizing it, it tends to dull the highlights. So we'll kind of combat that a little bit and try to work around that, and I'll show you some tricks with some blending modes and layer styles that we can use to kind of work our way around that. But before we get started with this tutorial, I want to let you know I'm selling a course. A link just popped up in the corner there. Selling a course over on tutvid.com all about how to retouch photos in Photoshop. Even if you're a graphic designer and you don't do any photography, there's still a ton to be learned about Photoshop in that course. And as I always say, most importantly, if you pick up a copy of the course, it's just the best way to support what we're doing here at tutvid.com, other than just straight up watching the videos and sharing them with your friends. That's amazing and super appreciated as well. But that's a great way to support what we're doing here. Allow me to dedicate more time and resources and effort to creating these videos every single day. And that's exactly what I want to do. So without further ado, let's get into this here tutorial and talk about creating this color splash effect in Photoshop. So I'm going to go over here to this empty document I've got, grab my text tool, and I'm going to open up my character panel, and I want to choose the font Novecento Sans Wide, and I'm going to set it to the weight of bold. 300 points is great. Everything else is perfect. Color is it is what it is, and you know, we really don't need to worry about the color because we're going to probably almost immediately colorize this anyway. So I'm just going to click, and I'm going to type out the word color splash. I'm just going to type color splash, and it's not all capitalized, so I'm going to open my character panel once more and choose that icon. It's going to just, as you see, capitalize everything. Maybe I should give these letters a little bit of spacing as well. 50, let's go 75. Yeah, let's go with 75 here on the little tracking, kerning option there. And I'm going to just snap that to the middle of my document. That's View, Show, Smart Guides. That's what those little pink lines were showing up. I love Smart Guides. Some people don't like them, but I do. Now what we're going to do here is apply a drop shadow to this text. So I'm going to double click on the layer out here away from the name and the thumbnail. And I'm going to tick on drop shadow, and I want to go normal. Angle of 90 degrees is great. Opacity of 100 is good, and just everything here is perfect. A distance of 4 is probably going to look great. Spread 0 and a size of 3. You can see it's a very subtle little shadow that we're just popping there at the bottom of our text. And next, we're going to go gradient overlay. Now, with the gradient overlay, I want to go with a simple black to white gradient, and we're going to adjust this gradient later when we decide on the color for our actual color splash. We may go orange. I'm thinking maybe I'll try like a pink or magenta or something. We can really do any color we want. We can do a bright blue or red or anything. With this gradient, however, what I want to do is the black is a little bit too hefty here at the bottom. It's a little too strong. So everything else looks good. Linear gradient, 90 degrees, everything's good. All I need to do is move my mouse out here and just drag down to just kind of move the black in the gradient downward a little bit and allow more of the white to come down from the top and just make the bottom of the text more like a light grayish silver type bend on the bottom of my text. And next up, what I'm going to do is pop up to my libraries panel because I actually bought this stock photo from Adobe Stock, and here it is, Milk Splashes Collection, isolated on black background. You can go ahead and purchase an Adobe Stock photo for yourself if you like, or hunt around on the web. There's a bunch of free stock photo sites as well where you should be able to go and download stock photos. I'm going to double click on this image here, and it's going to open it as a separate document in Photoshop. And what I'm going to do is just get rid of the black background, and we're going to do that by going Select Color Range, and I'm going to just click on the black with my eyedropper. And fuzziness, I don't know, between 140 and 150 is probably going to be great for us here. Go ahead and hit OK. And I want to make the black go away, so I'm going to go Layer Mask, and I'm going to choose to hide the selection. Remember, we sampled the black, therefore color range is selecting the black. We want to make the black go away, so we're going to choose to hide the selection. You're going to see that's going to make the black go away and just give us our isolated splashes of milk. Now, when I zoom in, I have a very obvious problem here with this little bit of like grayish, blackish matte on the edge of all of the milk. this is going to be a problem because when I drag it over my text, I'm going to see those little thin black lines. And obviously, like if you're pouring milk over an object, you don't see little black lines on the edges. So here's what we want to do. Select the layer mask here and open up your properties panel and then choose select and mask. Now we're going to move over to the select and mask dialog. I'm going to zoom in on this. I'm going to choose to smooth this by about 5. So I'm going to set that to 5. You can see it kind of softens that a little bit. And then I'm going to shift the edge negative 100%. And when I do that, give it a second, it should pretty well get rid of the majority of that darkened edge junk that you see floating around the milk. I think anything else we should be able to handle with just a quick touch of the old layer mask in Photoshop. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to adjust my layer mask. You can see, well, it output a new layer with layer mask because that's what I had it set to in Adobe Photoshop's Select and Mask. What we want to do here is right-click on our layer mask and choose to apply this layer mask. That is going to essentially delete all of the black pixels. So now we have a bunch of pieces of splashing milk that we can pick up and bring over to our other document to use. So I'm going to grab my lasso tool here. I'm going to grab this guy. Yeah, I think I'll begin with this one right here. I'm going to just loop it with my lasso tool and then grab my move tool and just click and drag, hold it on top of my tab, and then drag it out into the document, let go, and I've got this big sort of piece of milk. So now I'm going to hit Command or Control T to bring up free transform. And I need to, well, first of all, I need to size this down. Just hold the Shift key to constrain your proportions. And I'm probably going to size this down kind of something like that. Hit Enter or Return. I can refer to my original, and I can see how I kind of have the milk wrapping around it. So I do kind of have it heading in the other direction. So maybe I'll Command or Control T, and I'll just shift this a little bit more like that. That's probably good. Because we almost want it to look like whatever color this milk is going to be. As you can see, we're going to color the text as though that's already been colored by the splash of color, and the color is now splashing down the text to hit the rest of it. So there we go. We'll drop that piece of milk in place. Command or Control D to deselect. I want to grab this guy here. That's a good looking piece of milk. It's just a weird way to refer to a splash of milk as a piece of milk. I'm going to Command or Control T to free transform this. I'm going to rotate it, free transform it a little more. You know what? I think this little bit of milk should really go on the top part of this text. Right? It just looks so right. Something like that. Right? I'm going to commit that change. I'm going to grab the bottom milk here. And I think what I'll do is I'll flip this around maybe. Right click, flip it horizontal so it's heading in this sort of direction. Right? That's probably pretty decent. Something like that. I don't really want it to overlap on the letter O. That's going to just be kind of a pain in the neck and difficult to adjust and tweak. And maybe we'll grab this little bit of milk here as well. Then we'll probably have enough with these 3 pieces. So let's drag this over. And I'll Command or Control T. Oof, where do I want to put this? Let's see. The problem is if you go overboard with it and you put too much, it just really starts to look, I mean, bad. There's no two ways about it. It just starts to look bad. So you got to be kind of careful and deliberate with the milk placement that you choose to do. And I can kind of blend this together a little bit as well using my brush tool and masking. We can sort of start to blend all the bits of milk together. Boost that up a little bit. You know what? Maybe I'll keep it down like that. All right, that looks pretty good. So now what we need to do, I could close the milk if I want, but I'm going to leave it open just in case I need access to it. What I'm going to do here is begin masking the milk in / around each other and the letter R. So I'm going to begin with my first bit of milk here, and I'm going to hold down Command or Control and click on the thumbnail for the Color Splash text layer. I'm going to grab my brush tool. Well, actually, I'm going to deselect. I don't want to select it first. I want to apply a blank layer mask first, and then Command or Control click on that Color Splash, and the Color Splash text thumbnail, that is. I want to use my brush tool. I'm going to set the opacity to 100%. I'm going to right-click. I want the hardness of my brush to be around like 70%. And I want to paint with my foreground color set to black. Now I'm going to paint away that bit of milk. And what I want to do is get rid of, basically I want this top bit of milk to still be here. But I want to paint away all of this other stuff around it. So you can see I just want to paint away this darker stuff. And I'm not using my tablet. I'm just using my mouse when I do this. Obviously, if you have a tablet, that would be the best and the easiest way to go. But for some reason, I'm not reaching over and grabbing my tablet right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint that away. Great. Very cool. That could almost look like it's splashing through the letter R. Maybe we'll leave that for a second and just see what it looks like. What I don't like is I almost feel like it should be a little bit brighter coming through, but well, we'll leave it for now and just see what it looks like. All right, great. Oh, let me undo that. And I'm just going to go through here, just quickly erase. You can see it's just a little bit of hand erasing, picking the bits of milk which you wish to save. There we go, something like that. I'm going to hit Command or Control D to deselect. Gonna zoom out a little bit. Yeah, you know what? I actually kind of like the milk pouring through. Now, what we need to do is you can see how loading the text as a selection kind of gave us like 1 pixel of like messed up stuff there. So set your foreground color to white, hit the little switcheroo arrows there, and just, you know, go in and paint along the edges and just really, you know, this amounts to a little bit of like hand blending that just needs to be done just to ensure that everything looks good and is a nice smooth transition. Remember, because it is liquid that's sort of pouring down over our text, the edges of the text don't even have to look perfect. They can look like, you know, a bit of milk is sort of hanging down or splashing over them. See this back here? How this is like, you know, there's almost like a black line. We want to make sure that that very much is a nice smooth transition. And same here for this. We want to just make sure all of this looks good. Comes together nicely. Same for this here where the milk is sort of splashing through. And these little edges, right, that's just some black that the selected mask couldn't get rid of. So I just hit the letter X to set my foreground color to black, right? You see that over there? Black. And then I paint away the little bit of dark edge because that's going to kill any bit of realisticness that we have. So we really want to make sure we get rid of dark edges because that stuff just doesn't look good. All right, there we go. Good, 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 good. Cool. All right, so that's our first little piece of milk sort of flowing in and around the letter R. You see how that just kind of wraps around nicely. Let's turn the next one on and see what we got. Like up here, that needs to go away. That's just distracting. Whoops, I zoomed way in on it. That's distracting. Maybe down here, this needs to be trimmed behind the letter O. And, you know, just general cleanup needs to be done. So let's turn on or add a layer mask here. And let's first of all paint black up here to just get rid of that little bit sticking out there. Maybe I'll get rid of that little bit sticking through there. And then right here, we'll just get rid of that. Brush is too soft. So let's right-click and crank the hardness up to maybe like 90, 95. Just go in gently. You can see we just paint away. And, you know, the edge of the milk it's the edge of the milk. It's not going to be super-duper noticeable as long as you do a somewhat realistic job blending it. And it's, you know, it's just going to look like, you know, the milk is just sort of pouring around, you know, our letter right there, so that's good. I'm not too concerned about the darkness along there because I'm pretty sure, oh no, that's not really going to be covered up, is it? Maybe if we drag this upward, that'll be covered up, but then again, most of our shape will then be covered up. How do I want to do this? Let's see. All right, so what we're going to do here with this one, I'm going to once again load my text as a selection. We'll create that layer mask. Load the text as a selection. All of this in here needs to be painted away. Right, all of that needs to be painted away because that's all sort of shadowy stuff, and that should sort of be behind the letters, if you will. So like all back there, that's perfect for that to be back there. Command or Control D to deselect, and let's just go ahead and correct these edges. So I'm just going to make my brush a lot smaller here, and I'm going to paint with white all along this edge. So I'm just clicking once, hold down the Shift key, click again. And it's just going to help. You can see it just gets rid of that little, like, you know, that little messiness about the edge. And then we're just going to blend this down here. So I need to make my brush very soft because this is where we sort of blend this back in with the milk that's already up here. I want to make sure I don't have just soft, because the edges of milk obviously aren't going to be soft. So we need to make sure that we just kind of do this the right way. All right, there we go. That's pretty good. The bottom of the R is just kind of going into the milk or the color. And we do, in fact, we need to paint away a bit of dark edges. So let's go ahead and do that here for this, and then we're going to do it for the middle layer there. So set the foreground color to black. I hit the letter X to do that. Let's just paint this little bit away first. There we go. Blend that right in. Paint this away. Doodle-a-doo. Pretty quick, pretty easy. Not too terribly difficult. And as long as you have a nice soft edge on the brush, it'll all blend together pretty nicely. Now we'll select this layer on the bottom, and that's this guy here. So again, we want to just go over this and just get rid of all of this dark edge. It's going to really do a lot for you just to get rid of and clean up stuff like that. You don't want to just go and apply like a wholesale soft edge to it though, because that can really start to make your effect look pretty bad and pretty fake, kind of in a hurry. I'm going to go back up to the top milk layer, that's this here, and I need to just blend this in right? So that needs to kind of like seamlessly be splashing into our milk beneath it. And just bring that back a little bit. Paint away that darker shadowy part of the milk. There we go. And we need to see these edges, you know, this dark stuff on the edges. Just get rid of that stuff. It's really going to kill our effect. Get rid of the dark stuff. Even that little kind of like thingy hanging off, we're just going to dump that. Cool. All right, so that's pretty good. We'll just kind of blend that away a little bit. There we go, something kind of like that. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You could spend all day blending and mixing the milk, but you can see it's kind of like splashing around the letter R. We've sort of blended the stuff together. That does not look very realistic. What's giving us that? That right there. So select that layer mask, grab the brush tool, just paint that away. We're going to have a nice smooth edge where it's kind of like a snowball of milk is smashing into the back of the R and just splashing across the rest of the text. So now what we're going to do is select these 3 milk layers, select the top layer, hold down Shift, select the bottom layer, hit Command or Control G to group them up, and we'll name this layer like milk or something. And I'm going to, let's try to colorize this with a color balance adjustment layer first. So I'm going to go color balance adjustment layer, and we're going to clip it to the entire layer group below by hitting Command Option G, that's Control Alt G on the PC, and I'm going to shut off preserve luminosity. Let's go for like magenta color. So let's go for like a, you know, add some blues and magentas, a little bit of red to add to the pink. Let's go to our shadows. Let's really crank in the magenta there. Let's crank in the blue. We're going to go cyan red. I think we'll influence a little red. And then last but not least, we'll go to the highlights. We'll crank up the magenta, dump a little bit of blue in there, and also we'll bring the red in. So you can see there's still a lot of white just because it's milk and there's a lot of light color. So we're going to add also a hue saturation adjustment layer. Clip this, Command Option G, Control Alt G on the PC. And we're going to tick on colorize. And you can see, uh-oh, we just kind of undid everything we just did, right? Well, crank up the saturation and then use the hue slider here. And we're going to try to bring this to like a hot pink type color. And we can darken this a little bit. But you can see the problem with darkening it is we really lose like the zip that we had on the highlights, which was really, really nice. I'm still going to darken it up a little bit. In fact, let's try to drag it beneath our color range or our color balance layer, and you can see that, you know, things are really going haywire now. So let's take this hue saturation adjustment layer. I'm going to double click on it to open up my layer styles. And what we want to do is on this layer, we want to Alt or Option click this handle. It's going to split those handles, and then I'm going to drag that split handle back toward the middle. You can see how that's going to sort of restore some of those highlights for me. So that's going to just bring back some of the highlights while allowing the bulk of this sort of make me pink color take place. We're going to turn on our color balance layer, and now we have a much, much richer color balance adjustment. Let's open this up. Let's try ticking on preserve luminosity. Doesn't really do anything for us. Maybe if we just reduce the overall opacity of that color balance adjustment, that'll help kind of make it look a little bit more realistic, right? Something like that. So there we get a nice rich effect. And at this point, maybe we need to apply like levels. I'm just kind of freestyling here. Command Option G, that'd be Control Alt G to clip that to our layer stack and pull up on the shadows and the highlights. Let's really increase those whites. And just, I don't know, we really want to make those highlights sing a little bit. But I want to be careful that I don't just lose all this detail. Like, I really don't like how that's solid pink, right? So that's that color balance layer. That's what we really need to just reduce the opacity of it a little bit. And you know, the 70 is probably about as good as it's going to get for us. It's a little bit to do with our underlying milk layer as well. I'm going to reduce the hue saturation layer until I get something. You know what? No, I need to keep the hue saturation layer pretty high. About 90% opacity is good. I like what the levels adjustment is doing. The color balance is restoring a little bit of order. We could try setting it to a blend mode, but I don't think that's going to do a huge amount. So we're going to keep everything as it is. So hue saturation there comes in at 90% opacity. Color balance is going to roll in at about 70% opacity, and levels is going to give us just a nice little kiss of some magenta, or not magenta, what am I saying, the highlight contrast. It's going to bring back stuff and really give us that little bit of sparkle. Now, one of the things I am noticing here, and this would just be, we want to go in and do this by hand, is just go in and add some shadowing. So beneath the milk, but above the text, maybe we create a layer and call this shadows, and we could just take the brush tool. We're painting with black. We want to set the opacity very, very low, like 10%, maybe a little bit less. And we want to paint with a very soft-edged brush. And what I'm going to do is size my brush down. I don't know why I undid my right click. All right, there's about 10, 11 pixels. That's probably good. and we'll just paint in just very subtle shadows, right? It's just going to give everything a little bit more depth. Maybe I need to make this a little bit bigger. All right, it's just a little bit of shadow beneath this. So the milk is almost casting a shadow on these white letters as it comes pouring through. All right, that's pretty nice. Something like so. Great. And then over here, it probably needs a little bit of a shadow as well. Something like that. We can zoom out. And if I need to blur this shadow, these shadows a little bit, I can do that. Filter blur, Gaussian blur. We probably don't want to blur it very much, though. Maybe like 3 or 4 pixels. Maybe 5, something like that. That looks pretty good. And then we can just load the text as a selection from beneath it. Command or Control, click on Color Splash, and then click on the new layer mask icon just to make sure the shadows are only there on top of the text. So there's before the shadow, there's after the shadows. It just is going to help add a little bit of depth. And now what we want to do is color this part of the text with a pink that kind of matches the pink that is sloshing through our letters. We're going to do this by just duplicating the original text layer, Command or Control J, and I'm going to mask. So I'm going to grab the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to draw a selection over these first 4 letters, and I'm going to go Layer, Layer Mask, Reveal Selection, excuse me. So it's going to hide all the rest of that layer and just give us the first 4 letters. So if I go into this layer and I say, you know what, we need to apply, well, we don't want to drop shadow. And the reason we don't want to drop shadow is because the drop shadow for the full text underneath is still being applied underneath this, right? If we shut this off, we still have that silver text running underneath this. So we don't want twice the drop shadow for just the first 4 letters. That would be very bad, not very realistic. We want to leave the gradient overlay, I think, and I want to just double click on Effects and choose a color overlay. And let's go with like a pink, right? Like kind of a pink that's being splashed on, maybe like a little bit lighter, something like that. It looks kind of cool. Maybe we'll darken it up just a little bit. Saturation, increase the saturation a little. We don't want to increase saturation too much. We do want it to still look, you know, relatively realistic. Something like that. Hit OK. And we can see we still have our gradient overlay. So maybe if I set this to like soft light, no, that's not really going to do anything for us. We're just going to set this back to normal. If we wanted, we could basically set the gradient. We could set the gradient to be this kind of pink and go to a little bit of a darker pink. But I think for the sake of time, we won't do that, although it is really tempting to do it and just see what we get. You know what? I think we are going to do that. Let's go to the gradient, and I'm going to select Gradient Editor. I'm going to double-click on this white color stop. Let's choose a pink right in there. And you can see, I mean, it's really not that difficult to do. Hit OK. We're going to maintain the black because we still have it. Remember, we dragged it in position for that original like silver gradient. It's still respecting that, so we're not getting solid black at the bottom of the text. Hit OK. And if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that it's sort of like we've got our, you know, our color being splashed over these initial letters. Now, one issue we're having is we can see just like a little bit of a rough edge, and that's because we have doubled up that text there. So maybe in order to rectify that, what I think we need to do is we do need to duplicate that drop shadow back onto this layer. So we can just select the drop shadow, hold down the Alt or Option key, drag it up and drop it. You can see we got the drop shadow again. And load this layer mask as a selection by just Command or Control clicking it, all right? So it's kind of like a quick and dirty technique. And now we want to hide the first 4 letters for the original color splash. So we want to hold down our Alt or Option key and click the new layer mask icon, or we can go Layer, Layer Mask, Hide Selection. So that's going to get rid of the old text that's beneath this. See, the black box just appears underneath there. If I shut off the color splash, the pink text layer, those letters are just gone. But what that means is the edges of this text are so much cleaner. See, if I just disable this mask temporarily by shift-clicking it, see that like little bit of like gunk that appears around the edge? Super annoying. So we just get rid of that by masking away the underlying stuff. And there we go. We've gone ahead and we've created this sort of color splash effect. I think I would kind of like this bit of milk to be a little bit darker. If I increase the opacity of that a little bit, that helps a little, but I really don't want to lose the definition of the milk either. So you kind of walk this tightrope of getting the perfect amount and not having quite enough. But there we have it. We've created this effect. We can go ahead and we can continue tweaking it. We can add some grain. We could maybe do some brushing and add some stuff behind it. We can change the colors, obviously. We could add that pink to the bottom of the gradient as well out here, maybe if we wanted. But overall, we've created the effect that we set out to create. An effect where it's sort of like this splash of color is moving over our letters. The bits that it's colored, it's colored. The bits that it hasn't, well, they're still coming up next. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a little like on it. Also, drop a comment down below if you feel so inclined. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. That way you never miss another one of these tutorials in the future. for creating this color splash text in Photoshop and working with Milk of all things. Who would have thought? Milk and layer styles and text and masking and select and mask and a bunch of other things. That's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.